So, to recap, we have been following Socrates' journey that is very similar to our own, in which he talks to a teacher named Parmenides. He wants to know about the true beings, the things we're most interested in as human beings. What is justice itself? What is beauty itself? What is pure likeness? What is the one? He wants to know about this. He was a bit nervous to begin with. He thought he may be annoying these people, but they were happy with his questions. They opened the highest part of their minds, nous in the Greek. That's a term we're adding to our inventory. To his words and to his self. And Parmenides responded to his question. You want to know about these things? Well, you have a worthy... what did he say? A worthy desire for the logos, pursuit of the logos. And that's where we are. We're here because we are pursuing the logos as the understandable passageway to knowing these things ourselves. Socrates himself said, I'm interested not in these particular physical examples of beauty or one or many, but the ideas themselves that can be grasped with the mind, that have an ousia nature, a kind of intelligent, eternal, immortal existence. We call it metaphysics because it's before the physical world. Those things that you can grasp with your own eye of the soul, ousia, through the activity of what? The logos. So we also have a noble pursuit in the logos. So you could say Parmenides is addressing us if you're on this quest too. And I hope you are. Of course, the difficulties that Socrates have, Parmenides introduced. Hey, by the way, let me ask you some questions that's going to surface the problems you're having to understanding these ideas. We saw one of them is that Socrates is kind of talking about them as though they're just concepts. He's using the physical world as a kind of metric for grasping these non-physical things of a higher dimension. Parmenides points this out and he says, by the way, it's okay, you're young, you're new to philosophy, but also you are one of the causes of your problems is you care too much about the opinions of human beings. We can recognize that because I'm sure there are some human beings in our world whose opinions are stupid, crazy, problematic, harmful, but also we know what it's like to be concerned or anxious or afraid or paranoid about the opinions of others, opinions of people. And of course, we're not interested in the opinions, we're interested in the truth. Understanding, dianoia, understanding applied to the higher realities, truth, and knowing it directly, nous, experiencing it for ourselves, not other people and their opinions, ourselves. And you said, by the way, these are great puzzles. But the greatest of all puzzles is even if you think that these ideas exist, not as a concept like we generally think of ideas, but as existing in this pure way through ousia, eternally, as ultimates. If you've been convinced that these things are unknowable, you're not going to be able to be persuaded. Even if you're talking to someone very skilled, very talented, and very practiced in leading you through the arguments that can lead you to knowing them. And he talked about how the people who convinced us of this appeared to be knowing, appeared to be saying something good. But we can recognize that as the imitation of knowing. They couldn't be persuaded, not because they knew, but because they were stuck in their ignorance, tied to their false opinions, and they convinced us in some fundamental way. But then Parmenides laid out our quest. This is the scenario. This is where you'll find yourself. This is where we find ourselves right now. It's up to you. Someone who's naturally interested in this. Someone who has a natural interest and ability in philosophy to reach them anyway. Keep in mind those objections so you can address them fairly and get them out of the way. Slay the mob enemies as you go through the level, but continue on this Logos to define each of these ideas themselves. Fix your mind on that through what? Dianoia. What's dianoia? That's our new word. It's our word now. We say that. We say, hey friend, how's your dianoia going? Oh, good friend. How's your dianoia? Oh, friend, my dianoia is fantastic. This is how we talk now. Why? Because dianoia is a word we need to introduce to our language, because it's not just understanding the way we think about it currently. It's specifically applied to differentiating and defining those ideas, separating them apart themselves, and seeing how they relate to each other. And he said, you're going to have to keep your mind fixed on the objections. Those voices that come in and say, hey, what are you doing? This is nonsense. You can't know these things. There's no such thing other than the physical world. Get a job, you bum. Things like that. Keep your mind on those objections and keep going on the Logos and reach them. That's our job. That's our quest. That's the ideal to which all other examples of quests in movies, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Hunger Games, wherever you find them, all of these things in video games, all of these quests are copies or shadows of the ultimate quest. The human quest to reach the ultimate goal. And because it's an ultimate goal for all humans, not just humans, all living beings who have intellect, who have evolved and developed to the level where they have mind and language, can use mind through language, and can do what? Reflect on themselves. What's the word for that? Ousia. They're developed to the point where they have intellect, nous, and they can use language, logos, to reflect on themselves, ousia. Then they will be on this quest too. It's time for them to open the door and enter this world of the adventure, of the philosophical quest. Awaken philosophy for themselves. Any creature who's developed to this level. Whether it's 1,000,000 years in the past, 1,000,000 years in the future, 1,000,000 light years away, wherever. This is the archetype quest. And it's ours. It's not a far-off thing. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's an understandable thing. It's a real thing. It's a significant thing. The impact of it is the most significant. Our problems are because we have the negative logos. We have the shadow. We think our ignorance is knowing, and it's not. We think acting unjustly is justice, and it's not. We don't even know that there is an ideal, and we think, oh, it's just a matter of opinions, human opinions, right? Socrates' problem too. And so what do? We just fight or get into positions of power to push our opinions. We act like tyrants because we don't recognize there is an ideal, the ideas of each of these things. And they're not exclusive. Anyone can access them. And it's not relative. We can share in the understanding. And that's what we're seeing happening in this dialogue. Parmenides is not making Socrates feel bad. He's not chastising him. He's not fighting him. They're not beating each other up like barbarians and brutes like we see it so often in our relationships and in our cultures and in our world. They're going together, step by step. Why? Because it's universal. It's not many, it's one. And hey, not everyone's going to be at the same level. This is another element that we have to add to our understanding of logos. Hierarchical levels or stages. As you progress, your character levels up. That opens you up to higher stages within the game. So he's saying, hey, we're all in the same game. We're all in the same game. One game. The game. The only game in town. The best game in town. The most fun. The most meaningful. The philosophical game. The noblest game. But you're young. You're new. So you're just a lower level character. That's all. But that's fine because you can still go as far as you can. And if you do get stuck, there might be someone like me, an adventurer who's further along, has leveled up a few times, who can help you step by step through dialogue, through reasoned reflection, through conversation, through questions and answers to move along the logos and recognize the blocks to the logos. Here are your problems. I'm not telling you, it's not advice. You can see it for yourself. You are doing it. You are leveling up. It's not a tyrant. It's not a lord over a slave telling him this is your problem. You're this and you're that and you have to do this. No. Together, for all of us, it's the activity and the quest that can unite the world. But also, it can unite yourself, your soul. And this is something we see in the philosophical journey. The more we recognize the significance of this, the more we see the impact of this in our lives, the more we'll see ourselves becoming more one from many, more unified, more harmonious within ourselves, more like ourselves. The same selfer terms are becoming ourself. The selfer terms are becoming ourselves. We are becoming assimilated, as Socrates has said, assimilated to the model. We are becoming more like ourselves. Equally so, that applies to humanity. Because it's a universal quest. It's one that is not exclusive. Anyone open to the logos, to using their mind with integrity, can be on this quest. It's the same thing. Applying this logos, the better we understand what the logos is, the better we can apply it to this quest and to addressing our blocks or problems. The objections that we have, the counterattacks we can call them. Together, in dialogue, cooperative, no need for fighting, no need for conflict. We can be like each other. But how? How can we be like each other? Because we have the same opinions? Because we are in the same political party? Now we have to bring in the idea of hierarchy. What is the idea that most unifies? Well, the idea that most unifies is the idea with the greatest scope. Scope is a key word. What does scope mean? Scope means the greatest reach. So certain things only apply to a few things. You might say, penalty kicks is an idea that applies to a few different sports. But games is an idea that applies to not just sports, video games, board games, card games. It has a greater scope. So why are we talking about this? Well, there are certain ideas like beauty and justice and truth and one and many and likeness and motion and rest the ideas that we've talked about already, and we're only in the introduction, that have a greater scope over more things. So if we want to be unified, what has the greatest scope? What is a logos term or a self-er term that has the greatest scope? So it's higher up that hierarchy with the greatest scope. Also up that hierarchy of logos, we could say it has the higher metaphysical existence. So the higher the metaphysical existence, in other words, the higher their being exists within the hierarchy of reality itself, the greater its scope. So our question is, well, how can we become unified as a human race? How can we stop ourselves from killing each other and torturing each other and blowing up the planet, maybe? Well, what has the ability to unify with the highest scope? What is the term with the highest metaphysical existence? What has the greatest reach? What can we all share in, no matter what color or creed or religion or bit of dirt you were born on, or even time you were born into? For philosophy, and what we're seeing here, self. We saw how self refers to particulars, it refers to the realm of being. The ideas have a self, being itself, beauty itself, knowledge itself, but also that word self applies to all of the beings, therefore it has the greatest scope. The word self even has a scope over the beings, as it does to each of us. Hey, aren't you a self? Is your neighbor a self? Is your cousin a self? Is the guy living across the ocean a self? We're all selves. It's a way in which we can be united. United in the highest possible way. And as philosophical adventurers, we can recognize that self is also the ultimate goal. It's what we're after. It's the princess we're trying to save in Bowser's castle. Although it's a poor metaphor, we're not trying to save it, we're trying to awaken our recognition of it. This is a key thing in philosophy too. You're not putting things in, you're developing, you're seeing to be able to recognize what is there. While at the same time clearing away the objections. So clearing away the things that muddy your vision while developing your vision to see what's there. And we talked about this is why we're reading the text. To see what's there in the text requires a high level of cleanliness of vision. We're leveling up to see it. Every passage we look at levels us up a little bit, helps us to see what's there. And in our culture, we don't often get taught this. If you go to school, sometimes it's like we're asked, what does the text mean to you? In other words, project things that aren't there onto it from your own human opinions, right? Key idea. Parmenides recognized, hey, Socrates, the cause of your problems is you care about human opinions. You gotta give that up, son. It's holding you back. Projecting your own opinions onto the text is called interpretation. You might recognize projection all through your life. You might have a friend who is very irritable and projects everything onto everyone else. And you're like, hey, that's not what we said. That's not what we're doing. You're projecting. You're adding to what is there stuff that isn't there. Or you're missing out what is there. You're editing it out. So leaving out what's there or adding onto what's there is interpretation. Our task as philosophers, and why we train to see reality in that way without interpretation, to see reality as it is, to see our mind as it is, to see self as it is, we are training that by applying it to texts like Plato's dialogues that participate in that same logos. Because, hey, the highest ideas of reality are these ideas we're discussing and reflecting on, applying our mind to right here. It's the best training in the world for it. Same terms, same difficulties, same method of using the logos through dialogue and questions and reflection. That's why we read. That's why it's important to read these texts. But also why it can be a challenge. It can be difficult. Every time you level up, you have to keep your mind on the objections. Like, what's the other voice from the other shoulder trying to knock you down? Hey, you can't see that. You're just to this or you're just to that. That's not true. That's just a dumb opinion. Or these guys are dead, so who cares? Hey, what about evolution? If these guys are saying this 2,500 years ago, then surely it's dumb. Because evolution, right? Isn't it? As we go through time, then the ideas get better and better. So just get ideas from modern people. And it sounds like these modern people have the same objections that Socrates had, that there is no world of being, or even if there is, it's unknowable. They're atheists or something like that. Right? These are the clever people. And evolution says the clever people now are much cleverer than in the past. So just throw the book away. Unsubscribe. These are the things that will come up that are, of course, the same problem Socrates had 2,500 years ago. Really? Evolution is changing things? Well, how come the same problems he is facing? How come we haven't learnt? We haven't evolved? And you might say, well, yeah, I mean, in terms of evolution, 2,000 years isn't very long, so I guess we haven't really evolved properly. And if we can recognize that the objections took over, we burnt the libraries down several times. We banned philosophy. Hey, most religious books, you weren't even allowed to read it for yourself, so how are you going to understand and know and remove past beliefs and opinions if you weren't even allowed to read? So, yeah, we are stuck in the dark ages still. But this is the quest to leave that ignorance. Leave the darkness and the shadows of the cave, of barbarism, of absurdity, of loyalty to incorrect, harmful, stupid opinions of humans. To do what? To unify our souls through truth, understanding, and knowing. How do we do that then?
Wow.
Like, these are the stakes. This is the setting. This is where we find ourselves in. We are in this world at this part of time, which is a mystery, a puzzle in itself. Why are we here? How do we get here? And what are we doing? Well, this is where we are. What are we doing is what Parmenides is laying out for us. Hey, this is the human problem. So his level of seeing of what's happening and his use of the logos to recognize it and recognize the patterns and see what's going on is amazing. He doesn't really have to think about it. He can just use it. He can see through it in his conversation with Socrates. That's why it's universal. How can he do it? Because it's a universal issue. It's the human issue. Doesn't matter who you are, you're going to grow up in a family, in a culture, where you're going to be taught opinions that people are going to be big jerks about. They're going to appear knowing, appear like they're saying something significant. They're not going to be convinced otherwise. So it has this mark of certainty. Certainty is the negative shadow of knowingness. They are cosplaying. Why? Because our soul seeks knowingness, but they themselves were taught by teachers who didn't have knowing, which can be a bitter pill to swallow. Because a lot of these people who appeared to be so certain, we like, or even love, or attached to, or we think we need. It's a big thing to to give up or to sacrifice. But sacrificing the old false beliefs that might be comfortable is always part of the hero's journey. Hey, Mario has to leave his plumbing job and enter the new world. Harry Potter has to leave the safety and the familiarity of his bedroom under the stairs to enter the magical world. Luke Skywalker had to leave his moisture farm. These are all examples of the archetype. Philosophy is the archetype. So we're finding ourselves in the same situation, but the situation that we're in isn't doesn't have to be a mystery. It isn't unknowable. We can understand the situation we're in individually. We can understand the nature and the cause of the problems we're facing, whatever they are, and the human problems we're having. Ever noticed in society itself at large, so many problems are not being solved? And it can be frustrating because some of them have simple, easy, true answers. But what happens? Oh no, there is no truth, it's just my opinion, and my opinion is I'm not actually doing anything bad by exploiting the workers or polluting the environment. And so if I can manipulate human opinion, then I can get away with it. We see many different ways in which people try and get away with injustice and unharmonious behavior, not unified by this very same argument that's at the core of Socrates' thinking when he started as an adventurer, as a philosopher. Opinions of humans, and applied to the physical world. Well, if that country doesn't actually follow the logos and have a truth that applies and unifies all, and that country doesn't have it, and that country doesn't have it, then maybe it doesn't exist. Because surely everyone can't be wrong. Is that everyone? Or do they all have the same problem? This problem that Parmenides is laying out for us to see for ourselves. And hey, once we see it and understand it, we have to apply it for ourselves. Test it. See if when you pick up this task to know the truth, that which actually unifies, actually creates unity and harmony, actually elevates your being, power, and functioning, benefits. Let's see if you in yourself recognize these objections that get in the way, that distract you, that make you angry and want to fight, or want to make you loyal to your old human opinions that you're used to from loved ones or that seem familiar or comfortable. Does it happen for you? How difficult is it for you? And if you can do what Parmenides is saying, keep an eye on both the logos of understanding these ideas and also the objections. How hard is it? But also, when you do start to open your nous and your ousia to these this higher world of knowing, when you're at that precipice, is it difficult if your whole culture acts as though these things are not knowable? Hey, you're even open to the idea that these things do exist. Hey, hello there. Gadding, how are you? I hope you're having a good day. We're in here talking about philosophy, understanding what it is, and the significance of the philosophical quest. So, we're talking about Parmenides, the teacher of the great philosopher Socrates, outlining where we're all at. And it's not just for us to believe him, we're to apply this. So when you are at the precipice of knowing these ideas, even if you're open to the idea that there is a metaphysical existence of true being, true usia, if your whole culture is saying, hey, these things are unknowable, how much will that get in the way? Because Parmenides is saying this is the greatest problem, the human problem. Even if you're open to following these arguments and the person outlining them is very skilled and talented and experienced, you will not be persuaded if you are still convinced by the opinions of those who taught you growing up. The opinions of human beings who say these beings are unknowable. But he says you can still do it, so long as you keep your mind focused on those objections while also following the Logos to define each one of these ideas themselves. Not their examples, not a beautiful dog or a beautiful person or a beautiful thing, but beauty itself as a being that has an existence. Oh, great. Let me see this. Not an example, but the thing itself. Hey, thanks for sharing your thoughts in the chat. Let me pull up my chat on the other screen so I can see it. Make it bigger. It reminds me of how people may call certain things impossible even if they've been done before, and that might prevent people from accomplishing the same things by believing them impossible. That's it. That's what we're seeing in this text. So the text that we're reading is from about 2,500 years ago. Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, meeting his teacher Parmenides. Socrates is 19, Parmenides is about 60. And he wants to know about these ideas. He's come across an essay written by Parmenides' student. And he says, look, I want to know what these ideas are. How come there's such a thing as one and many? And how can they be existing ideas in a metaphysical existence? In a realm of being, metaphysics before physics have an eternal existence. I want to know about them. I don't mean the physical examples of it. Of course, I am many. I've got many parts. I've got a left hand and a right hand. That's many. And of course, I'm one because there are 7 of us here and we're each one person. I don't want to know about a one or a many, but the one. I want to know about these pure ideas, which is a Greek word, which we have to use because we don't have an English word for it. I want to know about them. And the conversation goes on and he says, well, hang on a second. There's going to be a problem here. Even if you're talking to someone skilled and experienced and can show you that these exist, beauty itself that can be apprehended with the eye of your mind through awakening the Logos, the system of reasoned reflection that we're going through. That if you fundamentally have been convinced that they're unknowable, it's going to get in your way. Just like you said. So this is the stakes. This is where we find ourselves in. But then Parmenides lays it out for him and for us. And let's get back to the text and see exactly what he says. So we're a few pages in, and I'm going to be posting the past readings so you can catch up if you're interested. Where's my chat gone? Where's my chat? Here we go. Gadden, if you're interested in this, if this resonates with you in some way and it makes you curious, then I'm going to be posting onto my YouTube the past read along so you can catch up, see where we are. But we're pretty much at the end of the introduction. We've got young Socrates meeting his teacher Parmenides, and he lays out the problem, the human problem, and he says, look, this is the human quest for everyone. You can do it. It's the greatest thing you can do. It's the most important thing you can do. And this is how you do it. Let's get to it. Here is the puzzle that we're talking about. This is Parmenides. Do you see, Socrates, how great a puzzle arises if one defines the ideas? The ideas, the truly existing beings that are eternal, immortal, before the physical world. We might call it spiritual. In philosophy, we call it metaphysical because it's before metaphysical. As being selves, they have their own self by themselves. See the puzzles that arise if you try and define them? Socrates says, yeah, I do. Now then, know well that you do not yet grasp how great the puzzle is of self. It's the highest. Self in the Greek means the highest part of yourself. As the saying goes, if you would place each one idea of the real beings as being something that is separate from our physical examples, not a beautiful dog or a beautiful person, but beauty itself. Not only that, separate it from the other ideas that have a being. How is beauty itself different from justice itself? Or goodness itself? Or knowledge itself? You got to define all of them if you want to get them. Socrates says, what do you mean? What is this great puzzle? On the one hand, there are many other puzzles indeed, but on the other hand, the following one is the greatest. This is Socrates, the greatest mind perhaps ever, talking to even his teacher, and he's outlining the greatest human puzzle, which means our eyes want to prick up. Wow. If anyone should say that the ideal selves cannot be properly known, such as we said that they must be, in a pure existing way. I keep losing my chat. Where did it go? I want to make sure you're not saying anything I'm missing. Oh yes, a lot of the time we're held back by the belief we can't do this or that. Exactly. He's outlining the greatest one of those. That belief applied specifically to the most significant things. This is why it's a quest for all of us. We need to set goals. One of those things that you're told you can't do, try and do them. Make sure it's personally meaningful for you. See what comes up. Use the logos to reach those goals and silence those objections. We are learning the method of doing that. We're learning something called the logos. That's the method for doing it. Keep losing my chat. If I click on this, it goes away. Why does it go away? Okay, I'll move it to my other screen. So we need to apply ourselves to knowing that which is most important and significant, these beings that have to exist in the way that we've been talking about so far. And the greatest human problem is this. It could not even be proven to anyone that you're mistaken if it were not the case that on the one hand, that he who argues that it could be proven, so if you come across someone who shows you that these things can be done, and they happen to be very experienced in a multitude of ways of showing that it can be done, and they have natural talent, and on the other hand, if you are able to follow and you're willing to follow these proofs through many long and elaborate details, even then, he who contends that these ideal selves are unknowable may still remain unpersuaded. That's the greatest puzzle. If you get into philosophy, if you hear about these ideas, if you awaken yourself to the philosophical quest, if you think that these things are unknowable, at your core, you may still be unpersuaded. Socrates says, in what way do you mean, Parmenides? In a way that I think both you and any other person, Socrates, would set up the ousia. What's ousia? A Greek word that means the intelligent existence, mind turning about on itself, that gives it a being. So these non-physical things, their nature is ousia, which is how we can know them, because we have ousia within us. That's the sense we want to awaken through a philosophy. Anyone who sets up the ousia of each idea as subsisting themselves by themselves, you must agree in the first place, none of these ideals subsist in us. It's not a concept. It's not in you. It has a being. Socrates says, of course, if they did exist in us, how could their ousia still subsist self by self? Self by self is a Greek expression that means itself on its own. Parmenides says to young Socrates, well, you speak well. Is it not also the case that of the ideas that exist in relation to each other, however many they are, beauty, justice, likeness, however many these existing ousia ideas are, they maintain their ousia, their existence, relative to themselves, but not in relation to the things in our world, existing among us. Hey, if a beautiful person suddenly becomes less beautiful, we don't have to worry about beauty itself suddenly becoming ugly. It's unrelated in that sense. It has its own existence. That's what we're interested in. Whether it's likeness or any other idea we want to set up as selves. And we do participate in each and every self, which we apply a particular name. We see beautiful things and same things, and they have the same name. But it's different than those selves that exist in relation to themselves. Okay, so that's the greatest problem that we have to be aware of as we go on this quest. This is a little update. And then Parmenides lays out exactly what we are to do if we want to take on this challenge as philosophers. So how do we do that? How do we use the logos to grasp these ideas and reach our highest goals? Nevertheless, O Socrates, these and many other consequences besides these must be so in relation to the ideas. The ideal selves of the real beings exist. If they exist, and if one wants to determine that each one is a certain ideal self, idea self, so that one who hears these words is puzzled and questions whether selves do exist, or if they do, that they exist in the highest degree. That's what we're after. Do they exist in the highest degree? So that it appears abundantly necessary that selves must be unknown by human nature. If you think that they are unknown by human nature, you're going to be very puzzled. This is what he's laying out. And whoever speaks in this way may appear to be saying something important. Appearance. They appeared to be convincing. And just now we said they may be thought of as being an extraordinary statement. Hey, you can't know these things with your human nature. You can't know God. You're just a sinner, or you're just lesser. It appears to be, or thought of as, an extraordinary statement. And these people themselves are so certain they can't be persuaded. Okay, so that's the setup. That's where we are. Now this is our quest. On the other hand, it falls to the ability of an individual of a very good natural disposition to be able to learn that there is certain kinds of each idea and that of self-ousia. according to self. We have to learn that. Oh, my keyboard stopped working. Let's see if I can fix it. Oh, goodness. It falls to the ability of an individual of a good natural disposition to be able to learn that there is a certain genus or kind of each idea and that of self-ousia, according to of self. And on the other hand, they will deserve even greater admiration who, having made this discovery, this is the second half. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I missed your chat. A lot of the time we are held back by our belief that we can't do this or can't do that. Absolutely. These philosophical concepts or system of thought do have an impact on us. Yes, absolutely. Our technology, how we conduct ourselves, etc. Right. And if we can see that, Parmenides is laying out for us. Get the highest ones. Find the highest concepts. By the way, these concepts are concepts of something. In fact, let's go back and talk about concepts. So this is where he starts. He starts where we normally think in our world, in our society. Socrates says, well, these ideas are nothing more than concepts, and they will not subsist in any other place than in our own souls, just in our brains. For in this way, each will indeed be one, and that which has just now mentioned, won't happen. So referring to what they just said. But Parmenides said, hang on a second, is each one of these conceptions one? Whereas on the other hand, is it a conception of nothing? These concepts we have, these philosophical concepts, are they of something or of nothing? Yes, of course they're not of nothing. So it's an intellection of something. Yeah. By the way, is your concept or intellection of being or non-being? Being. Ontos. Which means that these concepts are not just concepts. They have a kind of existence in a higher realm called being. So if they affect us, we want to get it right. Because how many people have crappy opinions about what justice is or about what goodness is? We want to reach the pure idea, which has a being. So we can live our lives and function in the best way. We can be happier. We can have greater skill, and we can use it to reach our most meaningful goals. In philosophy, reaching our highest goals of knowing these ideas themselves that are in being can lead us to our destiny, and staying only at the level of conceptions, opinions, takes us to our fate, the negative shadow of destiny. So this is the stakes. This is what philosophy is. Real philosophy, the one philosophy. Different from modern idea of what philosophy is, which is that there are many different opinions and there is no real being And even if there is a real being, you can't know it. And he said, by the way, that way of thinking, that, by the way, the current way we think in our society, that's the biggest problem. It's a guide to life and living well. Absolutely. In the highest way. And to get that, we have to somehow raise our level of being and mind to the pure ideas. That's the philosophical quest. But the problem is, in our world, we don't talk about these things. We don't know what being is. You go down to the pub. Oh, by the way, hey, how's it going? Oh, good. Have you reached the pure idea of ultimate being? Or are you so stuck? By the way, how are you getting there? Are you trying to find what justice itself is? Not an example of justice or opinion of justice or a concept. But have you raised the part of your, have you awakened the part of your soul, Usia, that has the ability to grasp these eternal ideas that have an existence metaphysically? Oh yeah, I did that yesterday. Pass me a beer. We don't really have that conversation. That's why it's difficult. It's been buried for 2,000 years, or close to it. And we're here to awaken it. Thankfully, we have this text which outlines the same problems that we're facing today. They're human problems that was faced 2,000 years ago. He's setting the stage and he's saying, hey, by the way, this is what you got to do. If you want to be better, have a greater ability, and function better. If you have that regular way of thinking that these things are unknowable, because somebody told you that they're unknown by humans, and they appear to be saying something important, they're thought to be saying something extraordinary, and they seem very certain when they tell you, hey, you idiot, get your head out of the clouds. There's no such thing as it's just a physical world. Make money and build trucks and just physical. They appear and they seem convinced. That is the greatest puzzle we'll have to overcome, says Parmenides. However, if you want to take on this philosophical quest, if you want to enter the hero's journey, play the noblest game, here's what you do. It falls on an ability, to the ability of an individual who has a natural good disposition. Oh, thanks for the follow. Cars and trucks and cars and industry all started as an idea in a person's head. Absolutely. Right. Now, so do things like goodness and beauty and justice. We're interested in things like beauty. We want to make a beautiful truck. We want to make a truck that is just. It functions well within all of its parts. So where do those ideas? Even before we thought of trucks, we had more primary ideas of beauty and justice. Where do they come from? And in philosophy, we say, well, hang on a second. They have a pure eternal existence in something called the realm of being. Ooh. And our purpose is to find those. Because they are the models. They are the archetypes that we can live by. And they're open to everyone who has mind, nous in Greek, language, logos in Greek, and the ability to reflect on themselves, ousia. 3 key words in Greek. Actually, let's make a note of that. No, I can't use that. I have to do this. Who can be a philosopher, a true hero, adventurer, someone who has, we're looking for a triad. As we develop the logos, we're looking for patterns. One is a triad, someone who has mind or nous, someone who has language, L-A-N-G-U-A-G-E, looks bad, language, logos, and someone who has the ability to reflect upon themselves. Ousia. Become a modern day philosopher in any way you can think of. That's the difference. We need to see the difference between modern philosophy versus perennial philosophy. Modern philosophy, if you go to school to learn about philosophy, you hear Kant's opinions or Hegel's opinions or Heidegger's opinions. Human opinions. Perennial philosophy is about truth, about reality, and self. It's a difference between many different opinions or one different truth. In modern day, we'll go looking for suicides to prevent and more. So this is a quest from modern philosophy we call kind of like materialism. Or the physical. Physical. Physical senses. And this is perennial philosophy or Platonic philosophy reaches the meta physics. Or the realm of being. So this is what we have. This is the difficulty that we face. Philosophy is the most important thing that we can do in our lives. It's essential for awakening to our true purpose, our true nature, but it's also the most misunderstood because of these differences. Modern philosophy doesn't teach this philosophy. Modern philosophy is from the Latin tradition, not the Greek. Latin. It's different. They're in conflict with each other because the Greek is about the one, not the many, about the metaphysical world, not the physical senses. It's about truth, not opinions. That's our difficulty. That's what we have to face. And it can be summarized in one word. In Latin, they have no word for the. All they can talk about is a beautiful thing, a just thing, a physical example. In Greek, they have the word the. So we're not interested in a example in our physical world with our physical senses, one of the many things and the many opinions. We're not interested in this. Metaphysics, true philosophy, is not interested in this. This is the objections. This is the sort of way of thinking that says, hey, you guys over here, no, you can't do it. Wake up to yourself. There's no one truth, it's many truths. There's no one philosophy, it's my philosophy, and it's your philosophy, and everyone's philosophy. Hey, if your philosophy is pigs shoot out of my butthole, then that's just as true as anyone's philosophy that says there is a meaning to reality. Who cares? Shut up. These are the objections that will come up. And Parmenides is saying these objections existed in human culture. It's a human problem. 2,500 years ago, they had the same problem. These problems will come up now for you if you take on this quest, if anyone would take on this quest. One philosophy? How arrogant. Who are you to say there's such a thing as truth? Surely there is no truth. Shut up. Allow everyone's opinions to exist, even if they're bad, even if they're absurd, even if they're harmful. Because isn't that good? That's crazy talk. Right? Imagine you get onto a plane and someone in first class is like, it's my opinion I want to fly the plane. Hang on a second, do you have any training as a pilot? No, but how dare you? It's my truth that I'm a pilot. Look at my hat. That's crazy, you're going to kill everyone. That's a harmful opinion, it's not true. But surely who are you to say that my opinions are wrong? Don't we allow every opinion to exist? And never challenge them? And let politicians and religious figures and capitalists get away with terrible, terrible things and never challenge them because we're allowed many different opinions and there's no truth? Isn't that the way we're supposed to live? That's the way we do live because we are stuck in the Latin tradition called barbarianism. It's not rational. It doesn't take us long to think, hey, you wouldn't let that person fly a plane. So why do we let that person fly our soul? Why do we think in this way? Why do we let them rule society? We want the truth, the philosophy, the beautiful. That's open to everyone. See, the thing about human opinions is there's no unity there because everyone has different opinions. Everyone has their own ignorance. But if there's a truth, it's open to everyone. Everyone who wants to take on the human quest to become rational, to escape their ignorance, the tradition. These guys burnt down the libraries, killed the philosophers. They don't like truth because they are stuck in their traditions of ignorance. Someone convinced them that what it means to be good and knowing is to crap on people, is to be a tyrant, is to silence the mind. Parmenides is saying that same voice is likely going to come up in you. that's going to try and silence you, stop you from doing what's important, stop you from reaching the realm of being. Be aware of it. It's the greatest puzzle we have. This voice took over human culture for the last 1500 years. This voice is going to come up in your adventurous quest. So that's why it's like a video game. In a video game, there is a goal. You can't just make up the goal, but there will be enemies that you'll have to take down. These are the enemies you'll have to take down, and this is the goal. We can't pretend that this doesn't exist. We can't pretend that this isn't a true goal. Our life is too important. Humanity is too important to make it pretend anymore. To allow for nonsense and ignorance. And Parmenides is saying, hey, look, you're going to have to do both. Develop this. How do we do this? Logos. A certain kind of reasoned reflection and understanding, dialogue and questions applied to the most meaningful things, but also the counter-attack. These will come up, or the anti-logos. The logos and the anti-logos. And that's what we're doing. One of the skills we use is looking for duads. Pairs. The positive and the negative. The logos and the anti-logos. The one truth, the many opinions. Perennial philosophy or the parent philosophy and modern philosophy. The Greek and the Latin. Look for the positive. And look for its negative reflection. That's our task. That's what Parmenides is saying is our task. That's what he's laying out for us. As true now as it was then. So who can take this task? Who can be such an adventurer? Anyone open to this? Anyone who has a mind. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter what political party your family is in, or what religious culture you grew up in, or what planet you're born on, or what time, or what parallel dimension you're in. If you have mind, if you are of a species who have evolved mind, we don't mean just like a dog's mind or a cow's mind. We mean nous. Mind has the capability of apprehending the higher realm of truth and being. That's nous. If you have language that put words on your ideas, communicate with others, that's logos in Greek. And you have the character and will and ability to reflect upon yourself, to be honest with yourself, to be open to giving up traditions and ignorance, to be able to say no to this, even if those voices are loud, even if everyone in your family or everyone in your street says, hey, you're not going to be in the club if you don't follow along. You need the character and the ability to say no to that because it's not true and you've seen it's not true for yourself, and go on the task to see, understand, discover, and confirm in your own direct experience for yourself the one truth of being, the truth. If you have those qualities, if you have evolved to that stage of character, of soul, Parmenides is saying, join the quest, join the adventurer, join my adventuring party, take this on. What is the quest? The quest of man to discover the truth and his destiny. The truth of man, but anyone who has developed mind, language, and ousia. Mind, language, and the skill and ability to reflect on oneself. All right, so how do we do it? Let's say we've been convinced. These are different ideas that I normally hear every day on TV, or every time I go to school or go to work or go to the pub. I don't really hear this a lot, but so it's kind of new. It's kind of strange. I need to hear it a lot. I'm going to have to think about this a lot and maybe watch this video a few more times, but I'm open to it. Okay, I'm with you. I'm a brave sort of a person. I'm down. How do we do it?
Wow.
Yeah. How do we do it? I don't know why there's cheering, but how do we do it? Well, here's how you do it. Well, first of all, what you're doing is these voices that say that these things are unknowable, they're going to get in your way. Be aware of them. Okay? But now what you're going to do is use your good disposition to learn that there is a certain class of each idea, being itself, justice itself, truth itself, and they have a self, ousia. They have an eternal, immortal being in mind. Not your mind, the mind. Themselves. By the way, the philosophers or human adventurers would deserve even greater admiration who, having made this discovery, go on to teach another person how to thoroughly well distinguish all of these particular ideas, all of the different ideas in the realm of being, in a sufficient way. Don't just do it, but you'll get even more admiration if you can, as a level up adventurer, as a high level adventurer, come back and help others. Socrates says, I agree with you entirely, O Parmenides. For you speak according to my nous. Oh, what has he just showed us? He has nous. What's he doing? I agree with you. I'm reflecting on what you're saying and I'm agreeing. Because what you say speaks to my nous. Socrates is saying, I meet those criteria. Your logos speaks to my nous. Good on you, Socrates. We're with you. But nevertheless, in turn, O Socrates, if anyone indeed does not permit these ideas of real beings to be, by keeping their mind fixed on all of these recent objections, all of those cultural, Latin, modern philosophy objections, and others like them, and you also have to define. So these are negatives, like if you do not do this, if you do not do this, if you do not do this. Let's read it as it is, and then we'll translate it into the positive. But nevertheless, O Socrates, if anyone indeed does not permit these ideas of real beings to be, by not keeping their mind fixed, so you're not permitting them to be real beings, and you're not keeping your mind fixed on all of these objections and others like them, and you do not define each particular idea, then surely then you will have nowhere to turn your understanding, your dianoia. If you don't say that the ideas of beings exist, and you don't keep your mind fixed on the objections telling you to shut up or stop, and you don't define each particular idea, then you will have nowhere to turn your understanding. You won't use your understanding. Dianoia. While they do not allow the idea of each one of the real beings is always of self. The self. So you got to do that as well. And in this way, they will entirely destroy the power of dialectics. Therefore, in such a way, you also, Socrates, appear to perceive much according to my mind, my nous. So let's translate this. Take out the negatives. He's saying if you don't do this, you'll destroy dialectics. Okay, let's say we do it. What are we doing? Number one, permit the ideas of real beings to be. Okay, cool. I mean, no one in my football team thinks that, but okay, I'm going to permit it to be. Keep your mind fixed on all of the objections and others like them. All right? Every time some Yahoo at the bar says, no such thing as real being, I'll keep my mind aware and I'll say, okay, that's just an objection. I know where you're stuck. So number one, keep the ideas of real beings to be. Keep your mind fixed on the objections. Define each one of the particular ideas. All right, okay, they exist. I've got to define all of them. Using your understanding. All right, that's what we use our understanding for. Gotcha. But also allow the idea of each one of those real beings being always of the self. Hey, these ideas that you're defining in the real beings, they are of the self. So that's what we got to do. Oh, and then by the way, what's all that together? The power of dialectics. So now we have our method, something called dialectics, which has these parts. What parts do dialectics have? Have we written it down already? Here we go. We are. What are the parts of dialectics? Using the logos that we're learning to define each one of the ideas of being that must exist. Keep in mind the objections. Recognize that each idea is of the self. Keep your mind fixed on this and use your understanding. That is the power of dialectics. That's how we do it. And we recognized a triad, didn't we? The lesser, the lowest, objections. The greater, the beings. And the ultimate, they're all of the self. So we can take note of this triad and add it to our skill tree of threes. Look for triads in the logos. Going a bit more. Triad of dialectics. We've got a lesser, a greater, and an ultimate. Sounds like League of Legends or something. You got your lesser skills, you got your greater skills, and you got your ultimate. But there's also an analogy, right? You could say a shepherd is to his sheep as a king is to his populace, people. This is an analogy. An analogy is lesser to greater. It's a kind of duad or a tunis. That's what we're looking for too. We've got a skill tree. We've got a skill tree of that we're adding things to of twos. We've got ones. We've got threes. So we've got the perennial philosophy is a kind of one. Greek philosophy is a kind of one. Truth is a kind of one. So we're adding that. We're developing a list or an inventory or a skill set, a skill tree. Look for twos in the logos. What do we see? We've got the logos and the anti-logos. That's a pair. The positive and its reflection. We've also got one and many, or rest and motion, or likeness and unlikeness. Look for twos. Also look for threes. Mean analogy. We could say Parmenides is teaching Socrates as Socrates went on to teach Glaucon. This through that reaches that. So these are skill trees. And so we're on the skill tree of threes. So we're seeing a two. Shepherd is to sheep. That's a tunis. One related to another. A shepherd is a ruler of a sheep. We see another two over here. King is to his people. Another kind of ruler. We have another two between these. These are kinds of twos. So we have an analogy as a kind of two. But we have a greater kind of analogy that has three parts. Like a mean analogy of analogies. A mean analogy is a three-part analogy. So teacher is to student, as a student then becomes a teacher of his student. So this student here learns this lesson through this guy. My guitar teacher teaches me. I teach other guitar students. So his lessons go through me to here. It's a mean analogy. Mean has a middle. But here we've got a kind of mean analogy as well, because we have a lesser to greater, that's the regular analogy, but now we've got an ultimate. What is the ultimate kind of king? The self, beings, justice itself. And what is it a ruler over? Our souls. This movement to the highest is called anagogic. It's taking a metaphor or an analogy and applying it to the highest, most important, and most spiritual. That's a key word, anagogic. Let's write down better. Add it to your inventory. Anagogic. It's a cool word. It means applying something to its highest. So we have lesser as to greater as to ultimate, and here we have the lesser. What's the lesser in the triad of dialectics? Well, objections. Keep your mind fixed on objections. Okay, what's the greater? This is the lesser. This is the crappy things that's gonna make it tricky, like we're saying. There are always going to be people out there saying you can't be done, even if there are people like Socrates and Parmenides who have done it. They often like to drink beer at the pub at the end of my street. The greater. So what's the greater thing to do? Well, actually do it. Not to say it can't be done, but actually doing it. What's the greater in dialectics? Define each one of the particular ideas. Define each one of the ideas. IDEAS, which we know are beings. And what's the ultimate that we have to do in the dialectics? Recognize that each idea is always of the self. Allow each idea be of the self. That's the ultimate. Triad. Lesser. What do we do to those in dialectics? In dialectics, all of this, we keep what? Keep fixed in mind and use our understanding. Capital U, because it's a kind of understanding applied to this particular exercise only. It's not understanding how your car works or anything like that. And so we give it the Greek word dia, N-O-I-A, dianoia. This is the triad or power of dialectics. Isn't that cool? He's saying, hey, you've seen the stakes, you've seen the situation, this is the outline, this is the environment, now go and join the quest, become a philosophical adventurer, reach your highest goals. And Socrates is like, well, okay, how do I do that? This is how. Triad of dialectics. Keep fixed in your mind objections, define each one of the ideas or beings, and allow each idea to be of the self. Let's make sure it's in the text, so we're not just interpreting. Permit the ideas of real beings to be. Keep your mind fixed on the recent objections and others like them. Define each one of the ideas. Use your understanding or dianoia. And allow the idea of each one of the real beings to be always of self. Power of dialectics. Wow. Therefore, you appear to be. So Socrates said, "Well, I'm with you, Socrates, because Socrates said, I'm with you, Parmenides, because you speak entirely to my intellect, my nous." And after laying this out, Parmenides says, "Well, now I can see that you perceive according to my mind, my nous." Socrates says, "Oh, Parmenides, I think you're telling the truth. You really speak to my nous." Parmenides lays it out for young Socrates and us. If you get this, then you're perceiving according to my mind, my nous. And Socrates and we say, you speak the truth. Hurrah! We're together. I'm picking up what you're laying down. Parmenides says, yep, you're getting it. You get what I'm saying, son. And we're together. And I hear what you're saying. He's like, yep, you're perceiving. What you're saying speaks to my mind. And Parmenides, yep, what you're perceiving speaks to my mind. And Socrates says, yep, that's the truth.
What in the heck are we talking about here?
Oh. We're talking about, hey, Biden, we're talking about the Logos. We're talking about the philosophical journey. And we're together. And this is where we're up to. This is kind of a huge update. Parmenides says, what are you going to do in relation to philosophy now? This is interesting because we can recognize this as another structure of the Logos. How so? Well, we talked about one of those triads having a being, power, and an activity. Parmenides is saying this is the being of philosophy. This is what philosophy is. That's what real philosophy is. It's not about opinions or concepts. It's about this. This is what philosophy is. Hey, everyone in 2024, this is what philosophy is. Holy crap. That's not what I hear at school a lot. But this is what Parmenides is saying philosophy is. What's its power? Dialectics. This is the power of dialectics. Power of dialectics, right here. This is the power of dialectics. This is a magic scroll that the words can move around because they're alive. They have intellect. And what's he saying now? Hey, Socrates, what's your activity going to be? What are you going to do in relation to philosophy? How are you going to relate to philosophy now? That's the question Parmenides is asking. What are you going to do in relation to philosophy after hearing what it is and its power? What are you going to do, viewer? Fellow adventurer? What do you think of all this? Did objections come up for you? Is this kind of weird? Does it make sense? Did it kind of speak to a deeper part of yourself? Did it intuitively kind of feel like it must be true? Was it like a breath of fresh air? Like, oh, I've always wanted to hear it laid out. You know what? I've always been kind of annoyed at the people who claim to know stuff, but they just had dumb opinions. And every time you say, hey, that's wrong, that's harmful, well, that's destroying the environment, they say, oh, that's just your opinion. That's crazy. I wish there was someone who talked about the truth, who recognized these objections, who showed a power of reaching the truth. Maybe you have that feeling and it's like, oh, thank goodness. That's kind of my feeling when I came across this. Like, oh, thank goodness someone's being rational, right? Someone's making sense. Did you have objections that came up? Something telling you, no, I got better things to do. Or this is not possible. This is not knowable. Uncle Joe always said you can't know these things, and Uncle Joe's the smartest man on my block. He's also the biggest drunk, but he's still the smartest man on my block, and if he says so, then I'm gonna believe in him. Did a voice like that come up? Well, that's part of it. Keep a awareness of those objections. That's what he's asking Socrates and us right now. He's saying, hey, given this, what was it like? And what are you going to do? What then will you do in relation to philosophy? In what way will you turn your mind if you are ignorant of these particular ideas? You know what? We're ignorant of them. Most of us, at least, don't know what these ideas are. We don't have the knowledge, we have the ignorance. We're used to the ignorance that says it can't be known. But even if we accept, okay, I get it, I'm with you. Parmenides, one of the greatest teachers ever. Socrates, one of the greatest minds ever. All Western thought is a footnote to Socrates, they say. If you guys are doing it, I'm on your party, I'm on your team, I'm on board. So yeah, I'm ignorant of those ideas. Love to know it. I love to experience it. I hear it's bliss when you can experience it. I hear it's a huge benefit and a breath of fresh air, as I say. So I'm on board. But I am aware that I'm ignorant. I don't know it yet. So what am I going to do? Well, my uncle would say, well, you know, being ignorant sucks, so just pretend that you know. Never be persuaded. Make it sound or appear that you're saying something important. Yeah, be like that. Cosplay as a knower. Act like you know crap. Right? Maybe if you're a boss, then you can pretend a bit more and your employees have to follow you. Or if you got kids, often they have to believe you because they're stuck with you. Maybe start your own cult or church or something like that. Act like you know. That's what Uncle Joe would say. But screw you, Uncle Joe. I'm with Parmenides and Socrates. Uncle Joe is that weary, worn adventurer who's by the starting area of Dark Souls or a video game, who says it can't be done, give up. Or join us. Join our evil group of bandits or whatever. These characters are in games and movies, but they're based on this archetype, the objections. And it's a human thing. Because these are human stories, these are human games, these are human narratives. So let's say we don't join the bandits. Let's say we join the adventurers. What are we going to do? In what way will we turn our mind? Socrates says, at the present time, I do indeed appear not to see any way at all. I have no idea, mate. I don't know. I can see what you're saying. I can see it. But I'm stuck. I'm ignorant. I don't know. Oh my goodness. That's it. Oh well. That was a nice book. Whoa. So what was a different thing. There we go. So, I mean, it was good to hear what philosophy was and to find the power of it, but as for the activity, Socrates doesn't know, so that's the end of that book. I guess we can throw it out. Sorry to have wasted everyone's time. Yeah, what a stupid book. I mean, it was kind of interesting to hear what philosophy was and stuff, but I guess if doesn't know Socrates doesn't know what to do, how to turn his mind in relation to philosophy, I guess that's the end. Oh well, that book goes in the trash. What do we think of that book? We say boo. Oh well, that's the end of the stream. That's the end of the channel. So, there's no way of turning our mind, considering we're ignorant of those ideas. I guess we give up, right? Actually, hang on a second. I think...
What in the heck are we talking about here?
Well, I'm not sure, Joe. I think we have more in this book to read. I think we're just finishing the introduction. I think we have a whole nother section to go. I think Parmenides has a response. There's some highlighted parts after. So let's take a break. Let's take a pause. Get some coffee. And come back to this task. Because Socrates doesn't know what to do. But now that we know what philosophy is, the power of the dialectics that we can use, let's find out how we should use our mind in relation to philosophy. How do we begin this quest? We've spent a lot of time outlining the stakes, why it's important, things that we'll face, the problems, the objections. We've developed some understanding of the logos, how to see pairs, how to see ones, how to see twos, how to see threes. We also talked about seeing fours last time. Developing keywords, seeing these patterns, keeping our mind fixed, the importance of dialogue, conversation. We've seen a lot. We've got a lot of understanding of logos with us in our Adventurer's Toolkit. And when we come back, we're going to see exactly what Parmenides is saying we should do. The activity. How are we going to do it? How exciting. Stick around.